Check out the Rugby Rant podcast show.
And welcome everybody to episode 240. And Rob is still laughing because he got that intro, and right after he got that intro, he got yelled at for recording that intro, and that's why he's laughing. And you can see there's like a production lady behind him that's like smiling.
Move
and
along.
She like she's just about to tell you to move, like she's just figuring out what happened, you know. And she's like, you can tell in her mind she's
exactly
like,
what happened.
So yeah, exactly. So that's why Rob's laughing every time we see that. We look at that poor lady and go, and she got caught by Rob Hammer. So, but guys, I'm the big guy, Scott Farrar. That's Rob. I like to take illegal videos, Hammerschmidt, and we're here at the Rugby Rant yet again. Man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, and the dogs were barking last night, so I'm excited. But yeah, things are good right now, and I'm looking forward to this coming weekend. Of course,
that's awesome.
We'll
we had a Monday night semifinal, which some people complained about, but me, as you guys know, I love the fact that we're on different nights, especially when they're, and to be honest, let's be honest, between the World Cup happening right now, what could have been games 6 and 7 of the NBA finals, right? So it's not an easy thing to manage
schedule.
Yeah. For the schedule, so, let's have some grace with these people, guys. We're on television. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. It's funny because last night I was, pre-game, I'm walking on the sidelines, ran into co-president Graham Bradbury and Sparksy. Big shout out to both those guys. They were heroes last night. And they're in town all week, just kind of working on nailing everything down that's going to be happening this weekend. And we'll talk a little bit about all the stuff going on Sunday, but there's a weekend slate of events going on. But I was talking to Graham and I said, here's the deal, man. I said, I know Monday Night Rugby is rough, but the fact of the matter is, with only 3 games, I would say 90% of the season, I watched all 3 games.
Yeah.
At some point, I didn't watch them all live, but I certainly caught them on the rebroadcast on the ESPN. But I was able to do that, and a lot of people were able to watch them live because they were spaced out. Each game was given its own time slot and kind of own attention, and I really appreciated that. And shout out to the Hounds. In spite of a Monday night game, I think the official, or close to the official, attendance last night was 2,756, 58, something like that. And that's walking through the gate, which I didn't think was bad given a Monday night, and traffic definitely sucked compared to what it does on a Sunday.
I mean, again, these are the same losers that go to Soldier Field, and now we're going to have to go to Indiana to watch the Chicago Bears lose to the Packers on Christmas Day.
That will not.
So
happen.
These are the same people that
my Lord
they don't
and
complain.
Savior Caleb Williams will not let that happen.
My point being is they don't complain when they sit in the traffic to go see a Bears game, and they don't complain that it's a Monday night, and this, that, thing. So that's, I got to be honest. If you can go, I understand sometimes, you have young kids and you're going and the wife is doing this or or the husband's doing that and whatever, I understand that stuff. But let's be honest, if you're a season ticket holder, you should be there. School's out for summer. Kids don't have anywhere to freaking go. God forbid they're tired when they go to camp,
dude,
who cares?
Like last night, it was funny you say that because, I mean, my kids are grown, obviously. Of course, Jackson went. But a couple days before, my wife's cousin had a baby. It's her 5th. So it's maybe she's 2 weeks old. And they have a 10-year-old, and she was so busy with pregnancy, she couldn't sign him up for local rugby, right? Which is president of the union is Ron Estrada. Shout out to Ron. But anyway, and they're good friends with Ron, but she just didn't get around to it, right? He was bummed out. He's like, I think you'd sign up for rugby. I said, hey, let's go to the game on Monday night. So 10-year-old went to the game, got him home at 11:30. He was a little bit tired. That's all right. It's, he'll sleep all morning, but he had a great time. He got signature from all the boys and really enjoyed himself.
And it's one of those things where you're always going to remember it. It was funny, we're recording in the middle of Argentina playing in the World Cup right now, and it's broadcast and they have all the kids who are they call them mascots. They come out and they're holding the players' hands and all that, and like it being in America, you always see it when it's in other countries, and it being in America, you say, look at how many kids times how many games times how many players. There's going to be X amount of kids, thousands of kids or hundreds of kids who said, I was a mascot at the World Cup in 2026. It's just a cool experience to say. You know what I mean? Like it's just. it's one of those things that you'll never forget. And same thing when you have a Monday night semifinal, you know, if the Hounds do the whole thing, the kids are going to remember, hey, you know, Uncle Rob took me to that Monday night game.
Yeah.
So I mean, my first professional football game was a preseason game that my Uncle Peter took me to when I was younger, you know, never forget it.
Giants or Jets?
It was a Giants preseason against the newly minted Carolina Panthers. And the greatest part of
newly minted.
It was when they first came back when they first came into the league, which is probably why we got the tickets because nobody wanted to watch them. You know, it was preseason, whatever. But we're leaving Giant Stadium in the infamous Giant Stadium traffic, and my uncle has this big SUV, and this little Honda rolls up, and this dude says, you know, can you roll down the window? And we're expecting, oh, maybe he needs, you know, to move over. He needs directions because it's, you know, a little crazy, the traffic. And it's a little Spanish guy. And he goes, yo, man, you got any of that Grey Poupon? And then he just drives away. And if you remember, that was the commercial
of the day,
where the two hoity-toity Englishmen is like, do you have any Grey Poupon? And he was in his Spanish accent, like, yo, man, you got any Grey Poupon? And then hit the gas with his Honda with the oil can friggin' and just drove away. But we still talk about that to this day, 28 years later. But again, it's the memories, right? It's the memories you're creating.
Sure.
You know? So
100%.
Yeah. And
so, you know, and those memories could be springboards for a kid to play rugby all his life, man. It's the beauty of the game.
Absolutely. Before we get to around the pitch, it was funny. I want to talk about rugby values outside of rugby. And I've seen it now the past week with the World Cup and, believe it or not, with the Knicks. We'll start with the World Cup. You have, you know, the Japanese fans cleaning the stadium with Jameis Winston at Giant Stadium. You know, he saw what they were doing and jumped in and said, this is great. They just had a feature on, I think it was either NBC or Fox, the Boston affiliate, where they were speaking to one of the guys who works at the park. And he was, you know, talking about how the fans were great and how they left piles of garbage neatly for him to grab. And he was like, there were 3,000 people here. And when they left it, he goes, they left it in such a way to help me get it done faster. And he goes, they didn't need to do that, but that's what they did. And, you know, we talk about that. We see those with the Scottish and Japanese rugby fans. We see it a lot. So we know that most of those soccer fans are definitely rugby fans. So that's melding over. And the second thing is, you want to talk about rugby values. I want to talk about Jalen Brunson. After I believe it was game 4, after they lost, he was being interviewed. And the first thing he talked about was how he had a conversation on FaceTime with a kid 3 days ago who unfortunately passed away that day. He didn't talk about the game. He didn't talk about losing. He didn't talk about basketball. He said, I was asked to do a video message. I felt compelled to FaceTime this young man. And we talked for about 30 minutes. And we just talked about, you know, his situation and his life and basketball and all this good stuff. And, you know, he just wanted to give the kid and his family a shout out because he passed away. And you don't see that often. You know, you're talking about the NBA finals. The Knicks haven't been there in how long? He's the leader of this team. They just lost, you know, at home to the Spurs. I'm sure you're angry. I'm sure you're upset. I'm sure you're in the locker room. You're throwing butcher level, you know, curses at the team for their performance and stuff like that. And he had the mindset to say, it's more about the kid and me being a professional athlete. And the kid wanted to speak to me, and now the kid's gone. And it really hit me as far as, you don't see that quite often, or maybe it does. I don't want to say you don't see it quite often. It's not put on display
enough. It's not put on.
It's not put on display enough for us to see it. The amount of times we should see it. I bet you it happens way more, but they'd rather put up the scandal than put up something like that.
Right.
So just shout that out. You know,
100%. I mean, how often have we seen the negative stuff being portrayed in the media because it grabs headlines, it grabs attention. Something like that doesn't necessarily do that, but it certainly hits home and it sends a message about what culture players, stars can establish for us as fans, you know, because we follow their lead. If they treat people with respect and humanity and dignity and show some gratitude for what they have and what they've been able to accomplish because of where they live and the people that have coached them, the people that have supported them, then it sends a message to everybody else. And I keep those things in perspective. So I love that story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to talk about, like I said, the rugby values outside of the sport of rugby that we see every day, though, in inside sports, because that's why we love it. But anyway, let's get to Around the Pitch. All right, Hammer, you're up. What do we got?
Thanks. Well, I just want to throw a big shout out this weekend. Not only is the MLR final, but there's also in Chicagoland at the Chicago Blaze rugby pitch, there's the Midwest qualifier, the Firehouse Sevens. Now, Scott, you and I and Rico Collins and a lot of other guests that have come on the show have always complained about oftentimes in rugby, we don't have that synergy. We don't try to really find ways to work together so that the calendars work themselves out so that we can maximize our potential for, events and TV viewing, et cetera. Well, this is one of those rare weekends where it is coming together because the Firehouse Sevens are on Saturday. It's a Midwest qualifier. Obviously, there's a bunch of qualifiers, including the fight at the Fortress last weekend on the 13th, and then the Gateway Sevens are coming up in St. Louis on July 11th. The Midwest Sevens in Elkhart on July 25th, and then all in order to qualify for the Sevens Nationals, Club Nationals, which is in Madison once again on the 8th and the 9th of August. But the fact remains that people are going to be able to go if you're in Chicagoland, if you're in there, if you're coming in for the final, come out to the Chicago Blaze. It's a proper rugby field. 4 fields, not all of them would be used for sevens. There's some practice fields, Scott's been there. It's a proper facility, man. It's got a bar. It's got a legit kitchen. It's got, TVs to view all the things that are going on all day and throughout the weekend. So it's a great place to watch. And as I said, Scott's been there. He can attest to that. But if you're in Chicagoland, come in for that. And then there are plenty of opportunities to engage with the MLR later on in the afternoon and obviously on Sunday.
Saw Hammer score a hat trick there one time. It was amazing. Even Mrs. Hammer was like, "I've never seen that before."
Calm down. That's calm down. That was in an old boys game.
It's a hat trick nonetheless, brother. A hat trick. I mean, you almost died the next day. You couldn't move your neck, but I think it was.
That's true. I'm still paying for it to this day.
All right. So my Around the Pitch topic is actually a heartfelt congratulations to our friends. Wendy Young and the team at Your Scrum Half Connection. They celebrating 20 years of Your Scrum Half Connection and their 250th episode. As I said when she was on here last, I try and repost everything she talks about because she is in on the women's side of rugby, and we want to make sure you guys are getting that information because one, it's great rugby. 2, it's great information. She's on top of the whole thing. I mean, that's a great achievement. 20 years of running Your Scrum Half Connection, 250 episodes of their show. We're on 240. We're getting up there, so we're trying to catch up with Wendy and the team. And again, it's just a great show. And when we embrace all the rugby shows, you know what I mean? There's a ton of us out there doing what we do, and whether it's team related or league related or gender related in this case, we're glad that all this information is getting out there because it can't come from just one of us. And the fact that there's a group of people out there just like us doing what we do and doing it at a level where they can continue to do it for year 21 and on, and for the next 50 episodes to 300. So it's just a really great achievement from our family here at the Rugby Rant. We want to just say congratulations to Wendy Young and the team over there. And then I have one more thing that I didn't tell Rob I was going to talk about, but I decided to talk about it anyway. When we talk about rugby values, there was a Mike Grand Poobah Perazini sighting 2 weekends ago. Did not get to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it now. And
okay,
Mike has a nice child, and he got married in the whole 9 yards. So he's been out of the podcast game a little bit. He's a little bit busy, but that's okay. Because he sent me a picture and it said, the Jacks Rangers show has invited you to follow their page because you recently liked their post. And the post he liked was making fun of themselves about not making the playoffs. And to quote Mike the Grand Poobah Perazini, because rivalries never die, I'd sooner stick my dick in a bear trap than follow that goddamn show. So shout out to Mike the Grand Poobah Perazini. One of the things, one of our slogans for Rugby United was ain't found a way to kill me yet. And he embodies that from a Rooney fan standpoint. That's one of the things that makes rugby great. Don't get me wrong, he says that in jest. We love our Free Jacks fans. We love going to Fort Quincy. We love them coming to Chicago and all that. And we have great, fans. Shout out to John Payne and all those guys who've been great to us over the years. But it's just, it made me laugh, and it made me smile. It made me think about the rivalries that we can once again have maybe going on in the next few years.
But by the way, shout out to Matt Cartwright. Attended 100 games. I think the playoff game this last weekend was 100th game attended. I mean, that's an amazing achievement considering how much travel he has to do to get to. He and his wife Jen have to do to get to all the games. But that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he was the as far as I know, the first 100 cap fan. So congratulations, Matt, and it's a big achievement, dude.
It inspired me to, like, Jackson has an app where he tracks all the games and concerts and everything he goes to on this app. And I forgot what the app is. And I've been poo-pooing it for probably a year. And so we're in the car going to the game last night. I'm like, I wonder how many games I've been to. He goes, gee, if you had the app, you'd know. I'm like,
it's funny. I was doing some spring cleaning and I have this little tin. It's a replica of Shea Stadium. And when they tore down Shea Stadium, we happened to have the Sunday package at that time. So we were at the last game of Shea Stadium. And they gave you this little tin, and I took in my my little ticket stub collection that I still have of like movies and concerts and games, hockey, football, baseball, whatever. And I put it in this little tin. I just happened to pull it out because I was doing some spring cleaning. But yeah, I mean, remember way back when they would. I still remember they would rip the ticket. You know what I mean? They would rip it.
Yeah.
Not just scan it. They'd rip the ticket. It wasn't. It's man, times have changed with that, huh?
Right. So it's an app called Memento, and actually you can upload pictures from the event.
Oh, that's cool.
Into that, and then you can upload, like, if you do get a ticket or you get you're able to get a printable ticket, or you take a screenshot, you can always upload it there, so you have that kind of evidence. But it's kind of a great way to keep track of all the events and games you've been to.
That's cool. In 2018. No, 2022, when I went to Scotland, we did one of the castles. I want to say it's Glasgow Castle, and your ticket was on your phone, but you also got your guide on your phone, and you get to keep it. So I still have that in my digital wallet, and all that stuff. So it's just like that. Let's see if Flicks or whatever MLR uses now. That's something they should be doing. Hey, historically, you can hold all your ticket stubs, quote unquote. That would be great. But anyway, we're old farts. Let's talk about the semifinal. Oh, man. And again, episode 240, we're talking about the MLR semifinals. There will be a new champion crowned Sunday at 7 p.m. at SeatGeek Stadium. Get your tickets now if you haven't gotten your tickets. Get out there. There's a whole slate that we're going to talk about of things. But first, we want to talk about the semifinals. And I got to be honest, I don't even want to talk about the second game, and we'll get into that later. But let's talk about that first game, California Legion beating our boys up in the Pacific Northwest. 43-34.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny because James Dealey, MLR Stats guy, put out a stat. I think real quickly, he put out a stat that was the highest collective scoring game in MLR history. And then, like, later on, the MLR used that information from him and posted the same thing. So he's like, can a guy get a bitch and crumb, right? I mean, a little something.
Here's the thing, and I want to say this diplomatically to all the teams in the MLR, to the MLR itself. Stop stealing the guy's fucking shit. And this is going to be another soapbox for me, people. I have the proof in which James Dealey tweet something, text something, put something on social media, and then the MLR, or the team in which he talks about, takes the same information that he has just tweeted or put out on Instagram or whatever, TikTok, and puts it in their own format and says the same shit not 2 seconds later is insane to me and doesn't give him credit. My point is just repost it and give him credit. He's not looking for monetary shit. He just wants to say, I use it. And I got to be honest, 9 times out of 10, the league posts a fucking stat and it's wrong. And he corrects it. And then they have to go back and correct it, such as caps. I mean, there's been at least 7 players who reached milestone caps and the league was off by 1 because they didn't count it correctly. But James Dealey coming in hot, knew what it was correct. So, this is my shout out to the league. Brandon Sparks, I'm talking to you. I'm not going to be there, unfortunately, on Friday.
I'll see him this week.
You'll see him this week.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Dealey needs to get paid, but it should be MLR powered by #MLR Stats or North American Rugby Database or something. When he puts this shit up, he knows you guys are going to use it. Just give him the credit. It's not that fucking hard. Talk about a rugby value you're failing on. That's all I'm saying. You're stealing from a guy who does this and doesn't make any money off of it, just does it as a fan because everybody else's fans wants to see it. You can at least give the guy credit. That's the rugby value of that. Anyway, sorry. Let's get to the match.
Let's get to the game.
Yeah.
Well, so it was interesting. As I'm watching the game unfold, I'm saying to myself that this is a completely different Legion team. And I'm not saying team. What I mean really is strategy and how they're going to play the game. Their approach to the game was completely different than it had been throughout 10 games of the regular season. Mm-hmm. And what is it because it's the playoffs and you don't need to score tries because it doesn't matter whether you win by 1 or win by, 47 or whatever it is, 37, mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. No, the W is what matters. So perhaps they just took a different approach in the playoff game. But here's what I do know, that California team ran it out of their 22 at least 5 times in the previous week, right? It was, they got an opportunity, they got a turnover, and they ran it out of their 22. Mm-hmm. They didn't do that at all last night or 2 nights ago. When they were back deep, they pushed that ball ahead with a nudge to the touch line, mm-hmm. and then in a few cases got penalties to get that next penalty and put that ball further in the corner to score some tries. And lo and behold, it was a formula to win the game.
I find it funny because if you notice, Nick Boyer didn't get any time for Seattle. And I feel like Nick Boyer is one of their better ball in hand type of guys. And right at that, it was like, what you want to say? Like, I think Legion scored around the 55th minute, or no, scratch that. I think Seattle scored around the 55th minute. California scores around the 60th, and then the 61st. They score a goal. They hit a penalty conversion. Then they score a try in the 61st, and then they hit a try 5 minutes later. And I just feel like from that 60th minute, Seattle lost something. I don't know what they lost.
Yeah.
But to me, maybe a guy like Nick Boyer coming in that momentum shift, not saying they were going to win, but maybe the momentum doesn't shift as much that way, because I think after the 60th minute, it was Seattle didn't score again until the 70th minute when Rufus McLean had his try. So there's a whole 10-minute gap of Seattle not scoring after they were pretty much scoring, every 3 or 4 minutes, whether it was a try or a penalty conversion, So it's one of those things where there's just a little dip in the momentum, just enough for California to come back. And I first thought, it was a dogfight right at halftime. That first 10 minutes of the second half, I'm like, oh, Seattle's really punching them in the mouth here. And in my mind, I was saying, maybe this is the same old California team we're seeing lose away to good competition. And then after that 60th minute, they just put a stranglehold on them, and that was it. It was all California Legion, all their possession. I think possession was like 60-40 at the end of the match. You think the card to Rhino was I wouldn't say momentum. It was 20 minutes before the momentum swing happened. So was it really that, I mean, obviously it's always an issue because you have your 20 minutes plus the guy not coming back, but you know, I don't know. To me, it wasn't that wasn't cause and effect, but there was something there that we're missing that caused it, and we're just not finding.
Well, there's a couple things I'd mention. I want to come back to that penalty and that red card that to Rhino Herbst, but to extend my point, I did a bit of research because I looked at the 3 games because they played each other 3 games, and California came away winning 2 of the 3. In week 4, they won 38-31. Week 11, they lost 33-19. And then, of course, this week they lost 43-30. Or sorry, they won 43-34. So I started to break down these games, and here's what I found. Actually, to my point earlier, that there were more. They actually had more kicks in play in week 11 and week 4 than Seattle. Or sorry, definitely week 11 they had more. They had fewer kicks in play. Excuse me, fewer kicks in play than Seattle. In week 11, so 8 kicks in play for 466 meters. They also had 12 kicks in play for 601 to Seattle's 21, but they had more kicks in play this game, 29-26 for 1262 to Seattle's 959. My point being is that nudge, kicking those that to touch, kicking the ball down the pitch, putting Seattle on their heels, making them fight out of their half. I think it was a formula. Now the question is, we can talk about this. Do they take this into the final game? We don't know. Another big one is their turnover battle. In week 12, so 2 nights ago, the Legion gave up fewer turnovers, a difference of 6, 9-15. So the Legion had 9 turnovers, Seattle had 15. In week 11, they gave up more turnovers to Seattle, 12-9, and slightly more in week 4. Again, the week 11 and week 4, I think the difference in turnover battle was 3 versus 6 2 nights ago. And I think that made a difference in the game. And then penalties. Again, the penalties were, did California kept them manageable? In week 12, they had 12 penalties to Seattle's 9. They had 14 penalties to Seattle's 9 in week 11 and 8 penalties to Seattle's 10 in week 4. But I think the red card is the one that hurts Seattle just in terms of momentum and not be able to get the edge in the game, for those 20 minutes, to your point earlier.
Well, we talked about, and I forgot, it might have been that week 9 Legion game or that second Legion game where we talked about missed tackles by Seattle. Yeah. And in this game, Seattle had 46. 46 missed tackles. Their tackle success percentage was only 76. And it was 33 that game I talked about before, Patrick Waugh. So let me hit you with an Andre Christitsen from the Montreal Canadiens, 46 penalties, because I didn't want to say David Krejci because I hate the fucking Bruins. So I went with the Canadian Andre Christitsen. 46 missed tackles and with a 72% completion rate is insanely low. And right. Especially considering, wow, California only had 12 missed tackles. Their completion rate, was only 82%. So that means Seattle was, for the amount of possessions they had and the amount of tackles that were attempted, broke, a fifth of the tackles almost. That you think that would be great. You think that, but on your side of the ball, when you're giving up a fourth, it's almost crazy. It's sad. It's sad to see that that's the discipline part that broke down, especially when you only see the 9 penalties, even though one was the red card.
Right. And it's funny you mentioned that because I had that written down too. And the teams in these 3 games in the matchup between these 2 powerhouse teams, the team that won was the team that had the better tackle percentage in every one of these games. So obviously defense is important. It's important to win that battle, and it's important to win some of those battles in other areas. And we mentioned in territory and we just gaining territory, and we mentioned the penalty battle.
And lineouts won. I think if I'm looking at it correctly, California was 14 of 15 on their own lineouts. Which is a great number. They won 18 total set pieces. So they're doing the fundamentals where they're winning set pieces. They're getting the ball out. They're doing what they're doing. They're changing their tactic, right, of play. And I'll kind of get into a little. Again, it's Scott Farrar, Scott the big guy Farrar soapbox day, because I'll talk a little bit about that with the next one. But I also have to say I'm a big Juju guy, and I just feel like the two games Lerome White put in back-to-back 80-minute shifts, Seattle was cooking. So maybe Lerome should have started. Listen, I'm not the coach. I didn't watch the practices, but I'm just saying he was on the field 2 matches for 80 minutes straight, and to me it felt like the boys were buzzing. There's something about Lerome that you could put him on for 80 minutes.
Brings the juice, man.
Kill it. Yeah, I mean, he'll just kill it for 80 minutes straight as a prop. 2 games in a row. You really see that, on like Division III sides, but then when they needed him, when the injuries piled up, he was there. So, I just wonder, again, this is my cosmic thing going out in the universe of rugby. Like, maybe they should have started the Rome for 80 minutes. Maybe that would have changed the tide of good luck. I don't know. It's one of those things, maybe somebody put their pants on the wrong thing, or, their kick got washed and they didn't wash it all season. Who knows? A lot of superstitions I think about, but honestly, this was the better game of the two on Sunday night, and we talked about at the beginning of the broadcast, Monday night, but this game I think started at 10 or 10:30 Eastern time. You didn't see me complaining about it. You know what I mean? That's prime. My point is that's prime time for Seattle and California. Like that's where they're at. So I'm not going to complain about that, because that's when you're going to have the most fans be able to go to the stadium. That's when most of their fans are going to be able to watch. And I'll either suffer and watch live, or I'll watch the replay. And you know what? It is what it is. That's where we're in. We're not NASCAR, who could fucking just move a whole event the next day because it rained the entire time. You know what I mean? That's still being prime time. No, that happens. I mean, how many times in a NASCAR race is postponed till Monday, and then they're still getting prime? Yeah, exactly. And that's just, unfortunately, we don't have that the economy of scale of power to do that. So this is what we have to do. I mean, and people, listen, you can't please everybody. We always talk about that, but just, again, it was 10:30. It was fine with me, dude.
Go ahead.
No.
Before we move to the other game, I did want to mention, it was interesting. You talk about watching the game late at night on Sunday night, and the Mrs. Hammer was up watching the game too, because obviously, with the Hounds in the other game and knowing that we had the other game on the horizon, she was interested in seeing, okay, which of these two teams might the Hounds play if the Hounds win on Monday night. And we're sitting there. It's about the 65th minute. She says to me, she goes, which of these two teams, when it was still tight, which of these two teams would you rather play if you're the Hounds? And I go, Seattle. Mm-hmm. And she's like, why? I go, well, they're more predictable pattern of play. You know what you're going to get from Seattle. And again, going back to my first point, which was, California, I think, just changed the pattern of play in this game, and it makes me wonder what kind of game that they're going to play on Sunday next week.
Well, let's talk about that second game. So your boys, there we go. Your boys, the Hounds, win a big one against OGs, and shout out to Steve Duma. The OGs get skunked again. Another one bites the dust. It's funny to me in a way, because like for some reason the OGs, even when they're at their best, they just like they remind me of the Sabercats. Like they just can't cross the line. Utah, they just can't cross the line. I don't know.
This
why.
was I don't know. This was a tough one for me because. And again, Miss Hammer and I were talking about it after the game. She's like, that's one of those teams that it's a great rivalry, but they're one of those teams that we really like. The ownership is great. Chris and Paul are phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Every time they come by, they say hi, they have a chat. They have some great lads. I know Ross Depperschmidt real well, and there's Harley Wheeler, and there's a number of a number of the lads from NOLA that I knew coming over, and of course Corey Daniel, and just some really great lads. And it was a bittersweet moment in that sense, because, I just know that that's one team that's doing things right. They're trying to develop American talent. So, but somebody has to win. Somebody has to lose.
I mean, they had Jason Emery at 10, the OGs. I don't think he's played 10 since maybe his Rooney days, and that's not his fault. Again, they have injuries.
Right.
He definitely was the best available 10 that they had on the roster. The dude can play anywhere. He can kick if he needs to. The good thing about Jason, he's a true center. He will run the fucking ball straight.
Yeah.
I just think, again, I think that throws off the whole team. I went from the last segment to this segment talking about tactics, and for some reason you're down 31-3 at halftime and you're still kicking the ball away. I didn't understand that, Rob. Like, the counter to your kick hasn't worked, right? Your kick chase has not worked for 40 minutes. This is the last game. This is the last game of the season. Why do you continue to kick away when your best bet is to have the ball in hand? Because at this point, Chicago's not making mistakes. It'd be one thing if they were making mistakes and, oh man, we just didn't capitalize in the green zone. You know what I mean? It'd be one thing if, we had 3 kick chases and we had the ball and there was a penalty or
3 turnovers.
You know what I mean? But if the turnovers weren't there in the first 40 minutes, and I know the hardest thing to do is change your game plan from something that got you somewhere. But like, this is what I talk about when we talk about dynamic rugby. California went into their game against Seattle and said, we need to be a little more dynamic and do something we don't normally do or haven't shown on tape recently. OGs just kept running the same game plan. And I talk about this with the Eagles sometime where I say, we need to be more dynamic. We need to figure out that this is not working. And the players on the field are the ones who need to do it. It can't just be this automatic thing of every time it's like you'll see some of these really bad football teams, like, running back right, running back left, running back up the center. Now it's 4th and 2, we're punting, and that's what it seems to me like OGs were doing when they were kicking the ball away, in my opinion.
It's funny you mentioned kick chase. Having an opportunity to play the Hounds and scout them throughout the year, who were some of their strongest players and what made them a strength? And you have to say Brock Webster undoubtedly was one of the strong points of that team. Why? Well, he's a dynamic in the attack, but probably the thing that stands out for me as I watch him is his ability to play the ball in the air. I think I've seen him miss one take in the air all season. He had a hero ball where clearly he's going to be going into contact. He goes up, he actually makes the grab, lands, and gets a couple meters, and the support is arriving right behind him, and they continue on their attack. So no doubt, I'm with you. The kick chase just wasn't going. It wasn't on. But I want to go back to your point about Robertson. His absence was immense. He just is able to control the pace of play, able to pull the strings in such a way, because we know that he can score. We know that he can go on the run, but we also know that he kicks real well to touch. We know that he can, put that cross kick over, that wiper to find one of his wings. We know that he can put a grubber
which
through.
is usually Jason Emery.
Chip. Yeah, we know he can get a chip and chase. He's just so dynamic in attack. And just knows when to utilize those skills, that his absence was immense. It made me ask and think about a question here, Scott. And I love Simon Cross. I think he's a fabulous coach, and he's one hell of a developer of talent. And as I started, I knew early in the week, as you know, I knew that Robertson was not going to be in. Okay. He was going back to New Zealand to be with his wife, and his baby's being born. And, I'm talking about it. So I'm like, how do they not knowing? I mean, the beginning of the season, they knew she was pregnant. The beginning of the season, they knew roughly she had a due date window, right? So at the beginning of the season, don't you say, we got to kind of make it a point to make sure that whoever our backup fly half is, that they get some quality minutes, so that it's not, it's not something that we're unfamiliar with in important points. And I kind of put that on Simon a little bit. But as I stood back last night, I kind of said to myself, well, hold on. Put a pause on that. Jason got you there. With the record they had, I think they had a losing record, as Dealey pointed out. they had a losing record. If you don't play Jason Robertson, do you even get to the playoffs? Because we know they.
Well, then that's the other question. So you take Jason Emery, who's probably played 80 minutes all season,
right?
And you're gonna keep him in for 8 minutes to play 10 after he just played center for 72 minutes. Does that necessarily make sense either? I'm not sure. Like it'd be one thing if there was a guy on the bench who wasn't going to be a starter in a different position and say, okay, well, give him quality last 10 minutes of a game that you're really losing, yada, yada, yada. Know that he's gonna be starting, or might be starting later in the season. But I think it's a conundrum on both ends because you have Emery, who's definitely going to be a starting center or wing, as your backup 10, essentially. Yeah. How do you? It's a little bit tougher, except like my point is if you look at teams that have quality nines. They always have a young 9 on the bench who's not going to play wing or play a different back position, so then he can come in. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So again,
right.
I hear what you're saying, but I don't think it was necessarily feasible.
No, and that's kind of my point. Kind of what I was getting to is that after I had to think about it, I'm like, but in reality, I don't know that they had many options. I don't know that Simon had a whole lot of options. I mean, as it was, Emery had only played 3 matches for 155 total minutes in 10 games. So it's not like he had a plethora of 10s to choose from to get an opportunity to get some, quality minutes in, so that the lads were accustomed to that flow of the game. And I think that was the hardest part. He got the Definitely. 3 points early for the post, but then once the Hounds started clicking, man, everything, all the dominoes started falling into place for them. It seemed like the ball bounced their way every time. But at the end of the day, I think that the most important part for the Hounds is their penalty count. They were clean once again. They had, here were their penalty counts against DC in the 3 games they played. Week 6, 5 for Chicago, 10 for DC. Week 10, 8 to DC's 9. And this game in week 12, 7 to 11. Right. And just that ability to play a clean game, it works even against a guy like Robertson. And again, when the penalty count was a little closer, that's the game that they almost pulled off. But it works against a guy like Robinson because you don't give him an opportunity to gain territory by kicking a touch.
OG's 32 tackles missed, only a 74% tackle completion rate. But even on the Hound side, and I think it was more sloppy at the end, even though they didn't concede that many points.
Yeah.
Only 80% tackle success rate, but I think it was more of just they were kind of on autopilot on that point.
They hovered at 80. They had 81, 80%, and 80% in their 3 games against respective games against Old Glory. So they're pretty consistent. I would think it was Old Glory. They had 85 in week 10, 84 in week 6, but 74 in this game. So a place of strength for them actually ended up costing them big time in this game.
Shoot, what was I going to say? It's funny. I was going to use Wilton Rabolo as an example of your Jason Robertson thing. Like, Wilton Rabolo can play all 3 positions in the front, right? I'm sure he practices both sides of the scrum and hook in a scrum, but that's because he could do that, and that because he could do that, he needs to practice for it. Versus again, when you talk about Jason Robertson, who would be a viable 10 to replace him other than Jason Emery? I don't know. I mean, at that point, like, I wonder if they tried to get somebody mid-season, just like, hey, injury joker, and then Jason, not like, who was available there to even do that, to do that 10, and how much foresight, even though the situation can happen, like how much foresight can you really plan to do that in week, or what are we, year 9, year 8 of the MLR, when the rosters are only X amount of guys, and the per diems have been toned down and things like that. When the league was bloated because talent was a little more spread out and the per diem system was helping load these rosters and load this practice, I think you had a little bit more leeway in those types of players, those types of skill players.
Well, and it speaks to, and this is just a zoomed out approach for me, it speaks to the challenges of building a roster, right? And that again, going back to a point I've made a couple of times, why the Hounds been so consistently good all season. I think it's because of the way their roster's built. I mean, you think, at one point and I'm going to have a dig at Petrie here, because Petrie, I think at week 6 or 7 was kind of like, the Hounds are 6-0, they're rolling. Hooley's asking them on, this Sunday Night Rugby, is this a team that can do it? Can they continue this? And Petrie's like, I don't know. I don't think they have behind Hilsenbeck, I don't think they have a fly off. And I'm going, well, yeah, they do. I'm going, they're good. I go, they got Videla who can play fly off if he needs to, but obviously can play center as well. Mm-hmm. So they got somebody who can, as your point earlier,
Jason Emery.
It can play both. Is more comfortable at center, but can play 10 because he did so in Miami. And then they also have Reese Bolta, who prefers to play 10, but it also can play 15. And he actually had a couple starts at 10. He had a couple starts at 15, and he was oftentimes coming in as a reserve throughout the season for Hilsenbeck. So it's somebody that,
I think I mean,
as
correct.
DC who didn't.
But also, when you want to talk about Chicago's whole season, how many times did they need a reserve 10 to come in to win them a game?
Well, they did. They did in Nashville because Hilsenbeck went down, and that's both that came in, and then both started the next game.
Correct, but my point is, late in the game when you need that, it happened once out of the season due to the injury. I don't know. I think his point was like, if that happens, how many times can it happen again? How many times can you feasibly convert those games into wins if that happens? But no, I hear what you're saying. I definitely hear what you're saying. Let's talk about championship weekend. We're going to post what's going on, Rob, if you want to read this here.
Yeah, well, so this is on Sunday, but there's stuff going on all weekend. There is actually a fan fest at Navy Pier that starts at 5:00. I'm actually, I'm gonna be there, thanks to Will Hooley. So he's asked me to come on down, so I'm gonna be there. But that's gonna be at Navy.
Screw you! You've been at the friggin' Pig and Whistle on 36th Street 78 times. Not one invite to the big guy. Not one big Cormac. He didn't call me and say, Will Hooley's coming down. You should come and do the rugby. Nothing. Thanks, Will.
I'll let him know you're unhappy. Your displeasure. So yeah, I'm going to be down there at 5:00, and then there's a VIP event happening afterwards. I said to Bradbury, I said, because he's showing me the rundown, I go, I wonder if there's somebody I could ask about getting into that VIP event. So nevertheless, giving him a little rib tickle there, but it should be great. There's going to be some great thoughts. I'm really interested in watching the scrum event, which is I think that might I forgot when that's happening, maybe on Saturday. There's a scrum championship that's happening at all levels. So I'm looking forward to that. Nice. Yeah. See, Friday night's a welcome party, Kaiser Tiger. Saturday is going to be Navy Pier. And then there's an MLR unscripted starts. And then at some point, there's going to be this big, there's supposed to be that scrum event. So I'm looking forward to that.
Interesting. I wonder how Paul Mullen's going to sneak into that one.
I don't know. Speaking of which, I saw Paul last night at the after party. And at halftime, I'm standing where everybody goes into the tunnel, and I'm watching Paul. He's right behind Ruben DeHaas, and he's in Ruben's ear about something. He is chatting him up, and Ruben's doing his best to ignore him. And behind him, Tomas Cesares is like shoving Mullen, like pushing him, like, "Hey, shut up." So I asked Paul. I said, "Hey, Paul, what were you shouting at Ruben about?" He goes, "Nah, I don't remember."
Yeah,
I'm like, "All right,
you snore." You snore in the hotel room, and I know you snore. I mean, that's great. But yeah, Sunday we have all these events. Fan Fest starting at 3 p.m. Take your picture with the shield if you dare. I'm one of those, again, superstitious people. I didn't touch the shield or take a picture with it until New York won it. Same thing with the Stanley Cup. Didn't touch it until the Rangers won it. But yeah, stadium opens at 6. 7 p.m. is the championship, baby. And the Flatfoot 56 is the post-game concert. There's live music, the No Limit Band at 3 p.m., the Fan Fest. There's like 57 different tailgates going on. Food trucks. The stadium opens, the parking lot opens at 2:30, I think.
Yeah.
So,
the parking lot's going to be fabulous, man. Yes. I mean, as it is, the Hounds and the Kennel Club and all the Hounds fans do a great job at tailgate, and SeatGeek, their parking control and SeatGeek institutionally does a great job allowing for this. It's got to be one of the best tailgates, if not the best tailgate in the league. And I have no doubt that Sunday's tailgate will be absolutely fire.
Shout out to Glenn Burr, Ashley Ardsma, Steve Johnson, Matt Cartwright, and everybody who I'm missing out of our friend group who's going, the Hammer and all that. So guys, I hope you enjoy it. So let's talk a little bit about the actual match, Rob. So what is your prediction here? We have a couple minutes left.
Well, I'd be silly not to pick the Hounds. I just think they've got the chemistry right. They've got everything going in their direction. Obviously 11-0, it's amazing. I always get worried when I see that, just simply because the odds are against you. Just the odds of winning are against you. It's like, okay, wheels could fall off the cart. But Latho just, I think, prepares the lads so well, and I think they have a great chemistry. It's one of the things that distinguishes this team. I think it's been the key to their success, aside from depth. It's their team chemistry. The fact that they brought, I think, there's the second highest return rate of players from the previous year, and I think it's their leadership group that's at the front that makes a difference. Rumball, Flesh. You got Devo's coming back for a second year. You have Hilson back. You got even guys like, Baska and guys like Noah Brown and Peyton Wall and some other lads that have been in that core group for a number of years, like Luke White, and then you got guys that came in like Jake Turnbull that are just, hey, I'm going to do what it takes to be successful. I know whatever role I'm given, I'm going to take. And last night, a guy like Turnbull came in at I think the 50, 55, 56 minutes and busted a nut. And that's what it takes, a group of guys that are willing to sacrifice from one another. Even though it may cost them some minutes or some opportunities, it doesn't matter. It's about we, not the me.
I mean, if you look at just the overall season stats a little bit, Chicago's averaging 7 tries per match, which is insane. Till California Legion's 4.7. Penalty goals, California Legion is averaging 1 per match to Hounds half a goal per match. Tackles made, relatively close, about like a 52 tackle difference California's way. So that's whatever. Successful, so tackles made and then successful tackles made is almost even, off by 2. But I think the big one I'm looking at is cards. Hounds have an advantage in cards, a two yellow card differential to them and a 2 red card differential to them. So will it be an issue of discipline for California? Like I said, I don't think California's been overall had a lack of discipline most matches, but that's something that could come into play. And also California's crossing to the Midwest. And like, I still contend sometimes when they travel, they don't travel the best. Going north and south is one thing, but for some reason, when they come close to the East Coast, they don't play well, in my opinion. So we'll see if they can knock off that rust for that.
Yeah. And I playing at home is going to be an advantage. Obviously, they're going to have, look, the biggest crowd the Hounds have gotten was close to 5,000. I've got to think every bit of that group is going to be in the stadium, and if they get
and a whole bunch of Seattle fans who are coming that are going to root for California.
right. But I mean, like last night, there was, like I said, about 2,800 in the seats, and they were raucous, man. They were on fire. They were chirping. They were giving it to DC. They're a knowledgeable group. The fans that come in that stadium understand the game. They understand the ebbs and flows, and they know how to stay on top of the game when the Hounds are playing well. And it's going to be tough to contend with.
All I have to say is, again, I talk about the superstition. The Hounds are 11-0. The Hounds are also 2-0 against California Legion this season. That's screaming to me California's due to at least punch him in the mouth. Now, again, obviously Hounds have the home pitch advantage. The Hounds have been there, in big games. California has been there in big games. Both these teams are looking to lift that shield. I just I have to give the edge to the Hounds the way they're playing if they come out. But the MVP of the season really is on California. And what do you think about him? And do you think he can turn the tide for California to win that match, Rob?
Talking about Bertrand?
Oh yeah.
Well, it depends how they play. I think he was and I don't want to say less impactful, but I thought that he in that playoff game was less noticeable. And it's simply because Milne took more of a front and center spot. I mean, if you look at Milne, I think he went 10 for 10 with the boot, had 250-22s in that match, and just really controlled a lot of the pace of play and a lot of the game from the 10 spot. And for me, I think that's the guy that I worry about. I don't worry as much about Bertrand. I think that the Hounds are disciplined enough and fit enough so that if they pull out that attack card and they start running and gunning from all over the place, I think the Hounds are organized enough in defense that they'll be disciplined and they'll be able to make their tackles and really thwart that kind of attack. And I also think that they keep their penalties low and they keep their turnovers low. It's going to prove to be a recipe for success. But I think that Milne presents the problem because he has a great boot. He obviously can put the ball into that corner if they need to. And then that's where they can be dangerous, is controlling that territory battle. It'll be interesting to see how the back three for the Hounds play. Do they play like they played last night? If they do, it's going to be tough to beat the Hounds. That's for sure. Because I tell you what, Brock Webster does not miss a high ball, and Peyton and Noah Brown really played super well last night. I was really impressed with how the young boys showed.
Is there any inside information on O'Keefe? Is he going to be available, you think, or?
I don't know, and I try not to ask the lads too much about their health because I just don't know that, I just don't want it to get out there. I like it to keep it themselves, although I did have a chat with Maka Jones after he took that horrible fall from that high ball. But I don't know what's going on with Mark. I don't know if he was just not selected or unavailable due to injury. But with his flexibility be able to play wing and center, it might come into play here. I'm not sure.
Well, because he's one of those guys when you talk about the kick chase, that when you were talking about the kick chase before throughout the season, that has always been good for the Hounds. So I'm leaning towards more that he was injured, in my opinion, than he wasn't selected, but we'll see. Anyway, guys, that's the championship preview. That's the semifinal review. And right now, as of when I'm talking, 8 p.m. Eastern, Sunday, June 21st, 2026 will be the MLR Championship. There's 4 days, 21 hours, 47 minutes, and 29 seconds until kickoff. I'm the big guy, Scott Farrar. That's Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt. Enjoy the final. We will, and we will be back next week to talk about the whole season. Talk to you all next week.